Welcome back to a brand new episode of NH Unscripted. Yeah, baby, we are close to the eve of destruction. I am your Barry Maguire-like host, Ray Dudley. We are coming to you from the spa-like conditions of the WKXL studios in Concord. You know the drill. Lay back on those water beds, fire up the lava lamps, and burn that incense, baby, because we got another burner for you today. Yeah, break out your Sony Walkmans, get out the radio portion, flip them on over to 1450 AM, 103.9 FM, that's Concord, 101.9 FM for the beautiful souls in Manchester, and our URL is nhtalkradio.com. I will tell you a little bit later about what is happening out there. First, I need to thank my sponsor. Oh, no, I don't. They're in the house. I told you earlier in another episode I was having Ron Abramson come in. It was his turn at the bat here. And so, good morning, sir. He is here indeed.
I am here indeed. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for coming by the way. This will be the Shaheen Gordon hour. Their URL is shaheengordon.com. We love them. We thank them so much for sponsoring this show. Everybody, you know the rule. Everybody should know a good lawyer because sooner or later, somebody you love, or somebody you know is going to need one. In this day and age, it's so litigious. Put that on your refrigerator magnet. Put it with your legal documents. ShaheenGordon.com. Their phone number is 603-614-5560. And let's get into it deep. Ron, your specialty area happens to be?
Immigration law.
Oh, how timely. How timely. I'll bet you're a little busy lately.
It's been a hectic stretch.
Maybe an understatement, I'm thinking. Before we get into all the nuts and bolts of what that entails, we'll talk a little bit about your background. How did you who even signs up for immigration law? And was that something on your radar early on?
Well, clearly I have masochistic tendencies, but that's not really the origin. For me, it's personal. I was born in South America. I came to the States with my parents when I was 2. It was mostly their decision. I didn't have much say in that. And when they became citizens around the time I was about 11, then I saw my passport change from a red Chilean one to a blue U.S. one. And I've been interested ever since, did some practice clinics in law school with immigration, came to the New Hampshire Public Defender, kind of kept abreast of immigration in a general sense, and then as one of the state's, certainly at the time, few Spanish-speaking lawyers who had even a little bit of background in this, it was just an obvious thing to do when I went into private practice because there are a lot of really good criminal defense lawyers in this state. Mm-hmm. There are very few immigration lawyers, period.
Why would that be? Is it just a difficult field? Is it just not beauteous? I mean,
it's probably a combination of factors. I think New Hampshire's not the most diverse state in the union, in case you haven't noticed.
Understatement.
But it's a difficult, esoteric, administrative, technical practice area. Some folks would say it's not the most lucrative area of the law, and some folks would be absolutely correct about that. So it's not super glamorous, but it's a need that has persisted since I started focusing on immigration law in 1998. And I've been practicing 32 years and been in the immigration space since 98, and it's never quite been like this.
So you started when you were young. You migrated almost naturally towards the field, you said, when you were younger. Because of your family? Was there something that happened that made you feel like, I need to maybe square some things up here in court? I mean, what caused that?
No, there's no sexy sort of villain origin story. I'm sorry. I wish I could give you that. Yeah, no, I was not bitten by a radioactive ICE enforcement officer, anything like that. No, just the familiarity with the process and with having had a front row seat and to, be bicultural and bilingual and, sort of add to the Hispanic immigrant piece being Jewish, just sort of made me understand what it's like to have to fit in somewhere where you did not begin, where you were not naturally part of that community or culture. So it just seemed it was just a sort of natural way to use my interests and talents in a way that was engaging for me, satisfying, but also able to help other people as much as I have.
Interesting. Most people, when they think about lawyers, they think, I'm going to sue somebody. It's all about, I'm going to try to get some money out of this, or I was injured or whatever. But I don't see that. Is that really not a part of immigration law? It doesn't seem like it would be.
Nope. It's interesting because I still do some criminal defense work, which I've been doing since I started, and I, have some litigation going. Usually it's us suing the government. But as a general rule, if I end up in court, I tell people something's gone terribly wrong in the process if I'm actually in court.
Seriously?
Well, it just means that things didn't get worked out the way they may otherwise have been worked out. And I'm not talking about settlements like you would have when there's a dispute between two people about a contract or something else. I'm talking about usually where a person is applying for some sort of immigration benefit from the U.S. government, and then for some reason they're denied. And there are, many, many, many reasons for that and variations of that scenario. But no, we are, it's not a litigation forward practice. It's a transactional, if you will, administrative practice mostly. But again, there are a lot of different pieces to it. And just in the last few months, for the first time in my career, I've been meeting with U.S. citizens, people born here who are concerned because of everything they're hearing about taking an international vacation this summer and whether they're going to have trouble getting back.
Oh.
That's a completely new client dynamic.
Oh, from U.S. citizens?
Correct.
Born here?
Correct.
Wow.
Right. Wow. So if you're paying attention to the news, there are reasons to be concerned. And I've been saying that, I feel like my cases, the people I talk to fall into one of two categories. The people who I'm trying to tell, you don't need to be that worried. And then some people who I tell, you need to be a little more worried. Yeah. And it just depends on the individual case circumstances. But there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of panic. There's a lot of uncertainty. The media mostly get it right, but sometimes the stories aren't reported, with full context.
This is my shocked face.
I know. It's a very good shocked face for radio. If people were here, they would be shocked at how good it is.
Thanks.
So
I've been practicing.
So it's really an unprecedented time. And I guess it's a benefit to have been doing this as long as I have. I speak to a lot of groups of lawyers lately, and it kind of boggles my mind that I look out and I think, wait, is anybody in this crowd older than I am at this point? And
welcome to the club.
The answer is often no.
When you went to school, and is immigration do you have a base set of attorney classes that you have to take, and then it's an add-on, you're a
correct.
Doctor?
That's exactly right. So,
it is. Oh,
so you basically in law school you have required courses, and usually those are satisfied by the second year. And well, bear in mind, I can't tell you how it is now because we studied on stone tablets and all that stuff, and we had to chisel our notes.
Cut them yourself.
Exactly, but I told a college student that the last pandemic I had lived through was the flu of 1918, and they didn't blink. They just looked at me like, I guess that guy could be that old. I don't know. Oh, my God. And so you get your core requirements out of the way, and then you either take what's interesting to you or what you think will serve you well in your future practice area. And so what I did in law school was to load up on clinical work. So I took an immigration law class, but then I also did an immigration law clinic, and I did the same with criminal practice. So by the time I got out of law school, not only had I studied and done sort of the moot court mock trial stuff, which I also did, but I had actually represented clients under the supervision of other lawyers and had practical experience that certainly helped when you become a public defender. You get some training, and New Hampshire is very good about that, but then you are thrown right into the frying pan.
Before we end up in this segment, do you have a phone number, a URL that you want to give out for people who...
Sure. The immigration practice group is 603-792-8472, which conveniently spells visa. Oh. 792 visa. We didn't add no visa or rejected visa to that recently. And you can always find us at www.shaheengordon.com and just alphabetically, I tend to be first with Abramson.
When you said that, you used the term clinic. Okay. All right. Hang on. We gotta pay our bills. Hang on just a second. Oh, I knew this was going to be a good one. You are listening to NH Unscripted. Yeah, baby, we are your elusive butterfly. I'm your Bob Lind-like host, Ray Dudley, coming to you from the Hollywood Square-like digs of the WKXL studios in Concord, where I love to sit in the center square, the old Paul Lynn. 1450 AM, 103.9 FM, 101.9 FM for the beautiful souls in Manchester. Ron Abramson is in the house from Shaheen Gordon. Yeah, we're talking law. We're going to get deep. Get out your pencils. We'll be right back. Welcome back to NH Unscripted. Let me tell you about the birds and the bees, because I'm your Jewel-Akins-like host, Ray Dudley. We are coming to you from the YMCA-like digs of the WKXL studios in Concord. I can smell the pool chlorine from here. No snapping towels, I'm warning you. 1450 AM, 103.9 FM in Concord on your Sony Walkman. 103.1 FM for the beautiful souls in Manchester. NHTalkRadio.com is our URL. We are talking immigration law. Yeah, I mean it. I really do mean it. Ron Abramson's in the house. When you brought up a term, clinic. I think you said clinic, right? Could
Correct.
You define that for us, just so that people who are like, wait, what? Clinics?
In the law school context, a clinic means a program where you get to obtain practical experience. You get out of the classroom, and depending on what the legal area is, you get into court with a criminal client. You get into an immigration proceeding like I did with an immigration client. And, I had a client in law school, the first person I ever represented in immigration court. It was a complicated situation, but let's just say that this person, who was an immigrant, had loved America so much that their child's middle name was Eddie Murphy.
Oh.
Because the child had been conceived while they were watching Coming to America.
I don't even know what to do with that.
I feel like if that doesn't qualify you for expedited citizenship, I don't know what
There's something in there, but I don't think I can touch it.
Exactly. FCC regs and all that, right?
Yeah. Oh, man. You said you've been doing this since 98. That's quite a long time to be practicing law and to be doing anything, actually. How has the scenery changed for you over that time? I mean, we've had people in here like Jim
Rosenberg.
Thank you. And I've talked to him about how technology has changed the whole thing for them and, the police and everything. What have you seen over those years that has changed that now you have to really adapt to? And maybe you didn't even go to school for it, and all of a sudden here you are.
Well, in a starker contrast, so I graduated from law school and took the bar in 1993. Ooh. We did not have email.
Great point.
We did not have email. We got our first email when I was at the Public Defender sometime in 1994. And it was intranet. We could only communicate with each other. Somebody, maybe me, figured out how to work around that and then got in trouble because I guess we could communicate externally, but there were fees for that. Just kind of like we used to pay tolls when we called people long distance, or texts used to be billed at 5 or 10 cents a piece. Remember those days?
Oh my goodness.
So obviously technology has changed a lot. The state of New Hampshire didn't have Windows for its court system for a long time. They were on DOS when we started. But that's always the case. And right now the hot button tech conversation in the legal community is AI and the role of AI and the sort of proper limitation of the use of AI. It's one thing to use it as a research tool, maybe as a starting point for certain things, but you're hearing in the news all the time about lawyers getting in trouble because they're using AI to write legal pleadings and their AI is creating fake cases or citations are wrong. And at the end of the day, that's always the professional's responsibility. When you sign your name to something, you are attesting to the fact that you did the work and you believe it's all true and accurate to the best of your ability.
Who has to search that out, though? I mean, how in the world would you know?
Oh, it's very easy. So you file a pleading and you didn't, reread it carefully. You relied on artificial intelligence to, do some of the core legal research and analysis. You file it with a court. The judges have clerks. The clerks are reviewing the pleadings and they're looking up the cases that you cited for the proposition of law that you believe helps your client.
Yeah.
And that case doesn't exist.
Wait, you're saying the AI just literally made up a case?
It can, absolutely.
Wow. I don't even understand how that can happen. I mean, legally, help me get my head around that.
I know. I mean, this may come as a shock to you, but not everything online is accurate.
Next, you're going to tell me the Inquirer is not always true.
I think it may be better than some of the online sources that we have come to rely on. It's fraught because we're all under pressure to be efficient, and I don't just mean lawyers. We're all under pressure to do things quickly, to do things to be as efficient. I mean, productivity is the American ethos, right?
Yeah.
And with that comes the pressure to cut corners, and people are constantly fighting that tension. I tend to be a more methodical, perfectionistic person. That doesn't always serve me or my clients well. I am someone who will occasionally let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And there's a balance. There's got to be a sort of sweet spot there. But at the end of the day, and you can Google this, AI can create misinformation or just completely invent concepts and principles and cases that don't exist in reality.
I get that, but you would think that with the AI out there nowadays, it would be searching and scrubbing the internet for actual case numbers. I mean, if it's going to say a case existed.
But you see, that's the difference between using a reliable web-based research tool like, say, Westlaw or Lexis, which is a database of the actual legal material.
Which is what I would think it was scrubbing.
Right. But AI is taking it a step further because now it's writing for you. It's taking what would be just information, which you would have to synthesize and turn into a legal pleading, and it is drafting it for you. Man. So if you are not conscientious and are not living up to your professional responsibilities, you and your client are going to get into some deep what.
I can imagine. I mean, if you're making stuff up, I really cannot imagine the legal ramification that would unfold from that. I mean, that's like
it would be
meta
bad.
Upon meta.
Yeah, it would be bad.
Okay. Has immigration law, I know the answer kind of thing already, gotten easier or more difficult over time? As you've matured in the field, you kind of get used to things and you get in a system and a method. But has the field itself, immigration law, stopped you from kind of falling into that, oh, I know, this is easy, we'll just go template with a...
Yeah, that's a good characterization. I've never become complacent in my practice because it is always changing. It's very fraught. It's easy to make mistakes. We often say that immigration is a terrible field to dabble in because you need to be up to date. You need to really understand how all the pieces fit together. We're seeing right now because, as you said, it's such a sort of hot topic and there's so much activity in the realm of immigration law and enforcement. We're seeing people decide it's a good business opportunity. And so people are, dipping a toe in. And again, it's not an easy thing to learn overnight. I don't want to feel like a gatekeeper, but, it's taken, even after all these years, I guess one of the values of doing this as long as I have done it is I also am pretty clear on what I don't know. Mm-hmm. But if you're new, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, right.
And so,
that's a very dangerous place to be.
Exactly. And so getting mentorship, getting help, joining practice affinity groups, that's where we all share information. And, those of us who are the old grizzled veterans now are, the ones speaking on panels and trying to help younger lawyers get a foothold.
Yeah. Would you, looking back on it, and in a few minutes I want to maybe get into some case, what's maybe some of the more famous ones. I want to talk to you a little bit about, you said you sue the government. That's a loaded statement. But looking back, would you get into this field again? Would you even suggest somebody get into this field? Right now, it is just, I cannot imagine, it's a flame. It's just burning red hot nuclear. it is such. Anyway, so I'm going to park it right there. But can you? Would you get into it now?
Well, you asked a two-part question.
Okay.
And I think the first part is probably yes. So as lawyers say, see my prior comment about being a masochist.
Okay.
But realistically, it's because I just, people are leaving the practice because the pressure and because it's just very difficult to, at least for me, to leave this at the office. Mm-hmm. I think it's a double-edged sword. One of the things that makes an advocate effective is to have a deep personal belief in what they're doing. But that's a tough thing to walk away from when you go hang out with your family or you go on vacation or you try to get a night's sleep. So the first part of it is I would do this because I don't really imagine being able to be effective at anything else. The second part of that is hell no. I mean, when people tell me that their kids are going to law school or that specifically they want to practice immigration law, I say, give me 5 minutes. I can probably talk them out of it.
Yeah.
But that's a bit of a flippant comment because the profession needs good, passionate, committed advocates. I mean, that's what this is all about. And you asked.
Oh, okay. Oh, man, I knew. Oh, God, I'm having so much fun. Hang on. We got to put a pin in it right there. Yeah, no matter what shape your stomach's in. Yes, you're listening to NH Unscripted. I'm your T-Bones-like host, Ray Dudley. We're coming to you from the honeymooner-like digs of the WKXL studios in Concord. 1450 AM, 103.9 FM on your transistor radios. NHTalkRadio.com is our URL. We are talking immigration law, getting deep in the weeds, thankfully. We'll be right back. Welcome back to NH Unscripted. Oh, I love that dirty water. I'm busting you in my town. I'm your Stendells-like host, Ray Dudley. We are coming to you from the dating game-like digs of the WKXL studios in Concord. 1450 AM, 103.9 FM, 101.9 FM for the beautiful, beautiful, beautiful souls in Manchester. Ron Abramson from Shaheen Gordon is in the house today. Let me give their phone number, the general one, 603-614-5560. ShaheenGordon.com is their URL. Write it down. I'm telling you, write it down. Ron, your phone number again, please.
603-792-8472.
Thank you. I asked you off air if there were any cases that you would want to talk about that you might be known for, that you might want to talk about without getting in trouble. And you said
yes.
Okay.
Do you want more than that?
Yes, I would, please.
I mean, we always train our clients to answer a yes or no question
that
with
makes
a
sense.
yes or no.
That makes sense, officer.
But we never follow our own advice in that regard. So I would change the word famous to high profile.
Okay.
And because it's New Hampshire, you can get coverage and publicity for things because it's a small state, and we all know that. And I think we said off the air, if the world has 6 degrees of separation, we have about 1.5 in the state, and that's on a good day. And it's for better and for worse. But we recently were involved in a case that got a fair amount of press, and that press ended up going around the world because we sued the government. It was our office and the New Hampshire ACLU sued the government for an improper termination of a critical student visa record that caused schools around New Hampshire, and in particular one student at Dartmouth, to be unable to continue research and attending classes. And the technicalities of this are so esoteric that I assume this is not a show dedicated to helping people sleep. So I'm not going to get into it.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, we end up in court suing the government always to get them to do what they were legally obligated to do but didn't. I mean, that's the gist of...
Ooh, what an interesting turn of words.
Right. The gist of a mandamus action, which is forcing the government to do something, or a preliminary injunction with a temporary restraining order to prevent the government from doing something, are always rooted in the law. And that's one of the things that, you said, is there something I want to highlight? I've had a lot of people over the years say, oh, you represent those illegals. Number one, that's offensive in terms of the terminology. But secondly, by definition, every single person who consults with an immigration lawyer is doing it because they want to be legal. And there are so many misunderstandings about the state of the law. Number one, a person is not either here legally or illegally. A lot of people are in process. A lot of people have transitional statuses. A lot of people have the permission to be here while they wait for an actual visa to happen. The second is when people say, my family did it legally. I don't understand why these people are just streaming across the border. Again, saying these people is a bit of a trigger word, but this is a situation where it's very different. People who came through Ellis Island were examined for visible sores on their skin. Yeah. And if they didn't have them and seemed physically capable of doing manual labor, they were waived in. Nowadays, the process is obviously very different, and there are family preference categories, for example, that would require certain people. If you are the sibling of if you're a Filipino sibling of a U.S. citizen and your sibling applies for you, you have to wait 22 years for your visa to become current. 22 years. Not a misprint, not an exaggeration.
That's by law?
Correct.
It's written in that way?
Correct. You can go look it up at the State Department's visa bulletin. Go to family fourth preference, look at the column that has the Philippines on it, and you will see that what's called the current priority date is 22 years old.
Is that the longest? I hope
that's the longest.
Thank God.
And so what happens in immigration is you have cases where something may be, quote, illegal, but it would be a really hard stretch to call it immoral. If you framed all this and turned it around on folks and said, well, what would you do if you couldn't be with your family? What would it take for you to leave where you live? Would you leave because you want to go somewhere else and make more money? Or would you leave because you think your life is in danger because there's just so much, criminality, instability, gang activity, whatever it is? Would that be something you would do to save yourself and more, probably more pointedly, your children?
Yeah, yeah.
So, it's so much more nuanced, and the human story is much more compelling. Even people who proclaim to be immigration restrictionists, anti-immigration, you start talking to them about deporting everybody, and they say, well, yeah, but not my gardener. My gardener's one of the good ones. Not my nanny. She's great. And, that's like so many things. It's if you put a face on it and there's a human angle. Look at all the neighborhoods that are kind of rising up against some of this enforcement, this kind of indiscriminate enforcement. Mm-hmm. And that's really what it's about. Very few people, including me, think that there should be no immigration laws. Okay? Yeah. That's not a viable position in this world at this time. But I think that if you're going to say you're going after the criminals, and then you're just basically casting a wide net and rounding up everybody you can because you can, you're not really following through on your promises, and you're definitely not making anybody safer. Mm-hmm. So I would like to see some ideological and administrative consistency and coherence in all this. Yeah. There have been many programs or proposals to create comprehensive immigration reform. Politically, they've failed. I think one party is not strong enough on the issue, and I think the other party would rather have it as a campaign issue than solve the actual problem. Yeah, that's politics for you. Ooh, man, so many doors to open here. But you need a good immigration lawyer to open them. That's the problem. Yeah. A typical day for you, what is there one, when you answer the phone, are you more likely to get a call about X as opposed to Y? Has that grown in stature? Now 15 out of 20 calls are going to be about, am I going to be dragged out or whatever? Well, when the student visa case, the student status case was in the news, in about 4 weeks, I think we had 200 students from around the country reach out to our office. Around the country? Correct. We couldn't help most of them because you can't sue in any court. You can only sue where you're admitted. But we tried to direct them to other lawyers. And overall, the issue is, for the moment, at least under control. And a lot of these students who were in jeopardy of not being able to graduate have been able to graduate. This is that season. And so for now, that's all okay. So that was a very, like I said, we had literally 200 calls or emails within a short span of time. And that, for a New Hampshire immigration office, is a lot. There may be big city offices that see that in a week. We that's a record month on just one type of issue, one type of question. Like I mentioned earlier, one of the most common questions I am fielding these days is concerns about travel.
That's crazy.
Even for people who objectively should have no concern.
That's crazy.
It's absolutely mind-boggling. And, as a lawyer with some ethics and principles, I've wrestled with charging people to have conversations, because I don't like to charge people unless I'm bringing some value to the equation. That said, giving people clear information about what to expect in this particular historical moment that is relevant to decisions they're about to make, I've come around to believe that does have value.
Yeah.
And so we spend a lot of time. I used to have a minimum case assessment time of 1 hour. I give people 30-minute slots now, because we can, get through this stuff quick and dirty. And the more I talk to people, the more I can sort of refine my advice, and the more anecdotal information that comes through, the more concrete examples we have of what people may expect. And sometimes just knowing what to expect will take that panic away, because there are people who could come back and be put in a room for a half hour. They've never had that experience before. Doesn't mean something's terribly wrong. It just means the government's looking at some paperwork, or maybe they're just even flexing on them. They're just, exerting some power. And then they get waved in like nothing was wrong.
But the unknown there would be incredibly
Exactly. So if we prepare people for that, as a rule, we can get them, we can minimize their anxiety in that moment.
Yeah. Man. Woo. You said that you spend some time suing the government, A, to do things they should be doing by law, or trying to get them to stop doing certain things. All right, I want to peel that banana when we get back. Hang on. Ron, can you give me your phone number again, please, for folks who are in?
603-792-8472.
Oh, man, thank you so much. Woo! Reach out of the darkness. Yeah, you are listening to NH Unscripted. I'm your friend and lover, Ray Dudley. We are coming to you from deep within the bunkers of the WKXL studios in Concord. 1450 AM, 103.9 FM, 101.9 FM for the beautiful souls in Manchester. Ron Abramson from Shaheen and Gordon is in the house. Yeah, we'll be right back. Baby, we are cooking today. You are listening to NH Unscripted. We are not quite your Winchester Cathedral, but I am your new vaudeville band-like host, Ray Dudley. We are coming to you from the Gong Show-like digs of the WKXL studios in Concord. Yes, we are. NHTalkRadio.com is our URL, where if you go out there, there's a little link you can click to listen live. This show comes to you live every Wednesday and Friday mornings at 9. You can also go out there and find all the archives of this show, plus all of the other great programs out there on the website. Go do it, 2 or 3 in the morning. You get your little warm milk and cookies and need a friend. We'll be out there. Ron Abramson from Shaheen Gordon, ShaheenGordon.com. is their website, but we're talking immigration law. Ron, would you please give your phone number again, if you would?
603-792-8472. That's 792-VISA.
Thank you. This is just insane. Before the break, I made a comment. I was starting to ask you about, you said that there's times you have to sue the government to do what they're supposed to do. And then there's times when you have to sue the government to stop doing something they're not supposed to be doing. I cannot even, I know this is a crazy day to be alive. And I've lived through the 60s and 70s. Man, oh man, to think that you would have to, somebody in this world would have to sue the government to do what is codified in law that they're supposed to do. That's a breathtaking thought. Does that happen a lot?
It doesn't happen as often as it might because not everyone has equal access to the courts. But I'll give you the simplest example. Okay, you have somebody who applies for an immigration benefit.
Mm-hmm.
They are either abroad and waiting for a decision, or they're here and waiting for a decision, and they have an interview, and the decision doesn't come in 30 days. It doesn't come in 90 days, and it doesn't come in 6 months, and it doesn't seem like it's coming at all. You can file a federal lawsuit for what's called a mandamus action, which means the court would compel the agency to take an action. Now, the court's not compelling the agency to approve the case. They don't get involved in that piece at that point. They're just saying you have to make a decision. This has been an undue delay. There are, like you said, it's codified. There are regulatory and substantive statutes that talk about time limits and the government's obligation and an agency's obligation to fulfill its mission by making decisions. People pay filing fees. You know, there's money changing hands.
Point.
These agencies are supposed to be self-funded based on fees. So what happens is you file that in federal court. A member of the U.S. Attorney Civil Division will contact agency counsel, and they'll say, do you have a reason? Is there a reason this is taking so long? And if there is a legitimate reason, then maybe they will push back and you will have a contested case. Most of the time, there's not a compelling reason. There's not an articulable basis. So you end up settling the case, and everyone agrees to pay their own fees, because if we take it all the way through and win, the government can be on the hook for the plaintiffs' or petitioners' fees. So that's the most common, simple example of why we end up in federal court. And there's a reason that the expression, let's not make a federal case out of this, is an expression, right? Because it's all more complicated and fraught when you end up in a federal tribunal.
Yeah. What would you like people to know if you wanted people to call you? And I know you're probably inundated, but if you wanted people to say, okay, this is what we're known for, you should be calling us if this is going. What would you say? Top maybe 5 things that you like. Look, you need me for this.
Well, we got into my background before, and I have a unique combination of experience, both sort of personal identity-wise and career-wise. So to the extent that I have special experience in New Hampshire, it's the intersection of immigration and criminal law. So if you're not a citizen and you're in any kind of trouble, you or your lawyer may want to reach out to me, and we can see what we can do to help you navigate that, or at least so you understand what the consequences of any decision to enter a plea or go to trial might be.
Okay.
That's one. Really, my space, our space, is we get a lot of cases from other lawyers because they get messy, they get complicated, they get ugly. And, to the extent that we've been doing this a long time and people think we know what we're doing, I'm not going to tell them otherwise. We get referred cases that other lawyers just don't want to handle or know where to start. So if there's, we have euphemisms for it. If there's a bump or a wrinkle or a hiccup, then you might want to reach out to us and we will figure it out. I mean, one thing we promise people, and I promise people, and I've done so since day one, is I will give you absolutely candid advice at every turn. I'll never give you false hope. I never want you to spend money you don't have to spend on me or any other aspect of the process. But a lot of times, we can't tell you, we can never guarantee anything, and much less now. So know that you're going to get absolute, honest, as effective as possible representation. Are we the best lawyers in the world? No. Do we win every case? No. Why not? Well, A, we're human. B, we take a lot of tough cases. Mm-hmm. If a lawyer says they win every case, either they're lying or they're doing super simple stuff that's not challenging.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Being, you had spoken earlier, you said you speak to other attorneys. You go out and
do presentations, conferences. Yeah.
On what kind of subject would they be looking for? What
depends. So the week before last, 2 weeks ago, I did a presentation for the New Hampshire Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers about recent developments in immigration law and how that impacts criminal defense practice.
These would generally be non-immigration
Correct.
focused. Okay.
Then did a more general immigration presentation to a group of lawyers from New Hampshire or who are admitted to the New Hampshire bar. Not all of them are New Hampshire lawyers. That was the week after that. Today I'm talking to you. I'm finishing up an article that's going to go into the ABA Journal about something called 287G, which is the cooperation agreement between immigration authorities and state, regional, and local law enforcement. New Hampshire's got a bunch of law enforcement agencies who've signed on to that.
Yeah.
I'm speaking at the Immigration National Conference in Denver. The American Immigration Lawyers National Conference will be, 5,000 lawyers there. I don't know how many will be there. Not in my room, God help us. But at the conference, and I'm doing a presentation with some other very, very impressive panelists about crimmigration, which is a word we've made up in the profession, but is what I said earlier, the overlap of criminal and immigration law. So, that's the kind of thing. And again, it's because, those of us who've been around, like you in your space, we've seen some stuff, right?
Yeah.
And, I haven't handled every kind of immigration case, but I sure as heck have handled a lot of them. And I have younger lawyers who call and say, what would you do here? What would you do there? And my brain, as much as it's overtaxed and failing sometimes, will say, wait, I think I did handle that once, and here's how we approached it.
Oh my God, I can't even imagine.
Yeah, it's a privilege and it's a responsibility, right?
Yeah. Funny, that term responsibility you had mentioned earlier as well about needing to sleep at night. So some attorneys, they deal with contracts and they'll sleep fine at night. It's just a contract, a piece of paper, and they're dealing with money or whatever. You're dealing with humans.
That's been my whole career. And there are times where in passing I may lament the practice choices I've made, but honestly, I don't think I could get fired up about if the only stakes in my cases were financial, business disputes, child support. There's a lot more than that going on in a divorce case. But, if really the measure of the case is money, then that's just not going to suck me in the same way as it is, my son who's 9 now, a couple of years ago, he said, Dad, what's the most important part of your job? What's your job? What do you actually do? I said, I think the most important thing is helping people who love each other either be together or stay together. And he paused, he nodded at me, and he said, that's a good answer. And it felt like he was trying to gauge, is it even worth you spending all these nights and weekends at the office?
Yeah, man, oh man. It has to be, some of them have to be absolutely agonizing.
Well, the worst is when you can't do anything to help otherwise very good people.
That, to me, would be unbelievably frustrating and soul-tearing.
Yep. And, we can't take every case.
Right.
We are on the map and we are overstretched as it is. And sometimes people get very upset about that, or they demand an explanation as to why we can't take their case. And lately, it's mostly just bandwidth. But, if you call an immigration lawyer who knows what they're doing on Monday and say, hey, I have an appeal due on Friday, there's no lawyer worth their salt who's really going to be able to do a good job. either the case has been very well prepared and it's so complicated you have to get up to speed, or it's too late.
Man, okay, that's just about, Ron, please, a URL and a phone number again.
www.shaheengordon.com, 603-792-8472. Thanks, Ray.
You're welcome. Some subjects, man. Jeez, oh my God. You've been listening to NH Unscripted. Yeah, we are coming to you from the Taj Mahal-like digs of the WKXL studios in Concord. My God, it's cavernous in here. 1450 AM, 103.9 FM in Concord, 101.9 FM. The beautiful souls in Manchester. NHTalkRadio.com is our URL. I am forever grateful to Shaheen Gordon for sponsoring this program. I mean that, Ron. Thank you so much. If you have a question about immigration law, please go see them.